Hello and welcome to another round of MTGA Tasting Notes. We're getting into the famed Single Barrel Merlot, the 2023 vintage getting released during the winter months of 2026. A whole 2.5 years of aging going into this wine to get it bottled, ready to go for you guys to enjoy. 2023 as a vintage, I love to touch on because there's always kind of the competitive nature of like, what are the good vintages, what are the bad vintages? And obviously I'm a little biased, but I still try to maintain that, Napa, Northern California in particular, it's really hard to have bad vintages. The weather here is very, very consistent. We don't have a lot of the trials and tribulations that more temperate areas of the world have. So whether it's from Napa, Sonoma, further inland towards Clarksburg, Lodi, even further down south towards Paso Robles, Santa Barbara areas, there are vintages that might be more challenging, a little less challenging. Are they overtly good, overtly bad, or better or worse than another vintage? I don't particularly think so. I think that each vintage kind of has its own amazing quality and unique thing that us as winemakers want to try to capture for you guys and help make our wines more interesting every single year that we make them. Now for Merlot in particular, it's something that very consistently has been coming from St. Helena in Napa Valley. And this 2023 vintage marks a shift in that program. The reason for that is frankly just dollars and cents. I hate to take a little bit of the romanticism out of winemaking because it's something that a lot of us cling to, both as consumers, as winemakers, folks in the industry, but also for yourselves, that are out around the country enjoying some of our wines. I'm a firm believer that as we're going through 2023 into 2024 and kind of this early years of the 2020s, there were a lot of growers in and around Napa specifically, and other regions as well, and it's not unique to Napa, that frankly got a little big for the britches, that really thought that their quality was as outstanding as anybody else's in the valley or in the world, and were charging an inordinate amount for the grapes they were farming. And quite frankly, with some of the folks that we had worked with and around, with Merlot specifically, we found that not to be true. I really found it an advantageous time to go and explore and see what other Merlot regions, vineyards were out there. Because just the bang for your buck in making this wine, paying what was more than top dollar for Merlot, just wasn't working anymore. So we made a shift. And 2023 will be the first time that we actually bought Merlot from outside of Napa. We actually went out to Clarksburg for this, which some of you are familiar with because you've enjoyed things like our Pinot Gris or some of Brittany's wines from out there as well. Typically kind of the lighter, brighter side of things. Luckily, this has been coming from a grower that we're actually getting our Pinot Gris from out in that area. So someone who we have been already working with for quite a few years at this point. And they had a little bit of Merlot available. And I said, you know what, let's bring it in as a test run. If I really like it, we'll continue it. And they said, great, let's do it. And in the early days, it was very bright, very poppy, what you'd expect of Merlot. But what's interesting about Clarksburg in particular is that it tends to be relatively moderate, alcohol content. You don't get this huge ripeness that you might expect from being further into Central California. You also have this amazing acidity from being in and around the Sacramento River Delta. There's this amazing tempering effect that is very akin to the coastal effect that St. Helena gets. In fact, the weather compared to St. Helena and Clarksburg, very similar. Might be a little bit warmer there on average, just a little bit, but it's not an outrageous amount. So as far as shopping around for new vineyard sites, I was like, this kind of is already leaning the direction of one, the style of wine that I want to make, but two, kind of my expectations of the growing season and what I think great Merlot needs. So it was a lot of work doing kind of some due diligence, tasting a lot of wine, figuring out the direction we want to go, and this is what we settled on, all said and done. I have to say, I am very pleasantly surprised. This is one of those moments in my winemaking career where I've been more nervous than anything else because it was a big shift for us. And for many of you who have been drinking our Merlot for so long, we've kind of really harped on, St. Helena specifically, Napa specifically. And as we get into kind of this new era of wine, as things are very tumultuous within the wine industry, there's a lot of adjusting going on in and around Napa, Sonoma, the entire wine world, really. And we're, wrapped up in that as well. It's affected us as much as anybody else. But it has allowed us an amazing opportunity to experiment, try some new things, throw it at the wall, see what sticks. Now, this wine, I will say, I think the biggest thing that surprises me about this wine is that it's a blast from the past. The Merlot that's coming from this vineyard, for those of you that have been following us for a long time and maybe tried some of our early wines from 2011, 12, 13, 14, some of our first few vintages, that's what this reminds me of. This really brought me back to my roots of why I fell in love with making Merlot in the first place. The amazing complexity, the brightness, the structure, everything that it has to offer, and play ball with some of the other big, heavy hitters out there in the world of wine. And because even on the nose, this is a wine that we still put into for the Single Barrel Merlot. It's still 100% new French oak. So you have a significant oak program. It doesn't overpower it, though. You still have those bright red fruits, a little bit of those blue fruits hanging around there. You get a little bit of that kind of baking, as Brittany, the HBIC, she loves to say, like those Christmas spice kind of characteristics on the nose from the barrel aging. A little bit more vanilla on it this year, but it's just this nice even keel, like very perfumey nose that we have on this wine, which is a hallmark and something I really try and focus on in my winemaking is the aroma. If it doesn't jump out of the glass, it's going to be tough to wrap your head around it on your palate. Most of what you taste is what you smell, after all. So we always want our wine to jump out of the glass at you. And it really carries over to the palate. There is just this nice freshness to this wine. And I will say, 2023 was a cooler vintage as well. Some of these wines that are coming out from this year, not overtly cold like we've had more recently in 2025, but cool. Very long growing seasons, very much kind of leaning in towards more complexity, more concentration, just depth of flavor when we have these nice long growing seasons without any kind of quirks like heat spikes or rainstorms or whatever it is. If it's just kind of this nice long season where us winemakers get to call all of the shots and Mother Nature participates in that, it's hard to beat. You really get kind of the best of all worlds in these wines from these vintages. Is it objectively better? Are you going to love this way more than any other vintage around it? Maybe, maybe not. But from a winemaking and production standpoint here in the cave, it makes life a whole lot easier. My stress level in 2023 was far lower than some other vintages like a 2022 or even more recently in 2025, given some of the feisty weather that we had during those years. And the thing with this wine too is that with the oak still being really prevalent, kind of the more you swirl it or decant it, kind of the better it gets. It opens up, it changes every couple of minutes as you get it a little bit more airtime. Very typically, I think our wines are pretty ready to go. You don't necessarily have to decant them right away, but this is one of them where I'm like, you know what, this could probably benefit from a little aeration. So splash it around a decanter, pour yourself a hefty glass and just kind of slowly sip on it, see how it changes, see how it evolves. Because now it's, that oak characteristic is kind of blowing off a little bit. You're noticing a little bit more of the fruit, a little bit more kind of the earthier tones in it, which is great because these vineyards are situated in some very kind of rich, deep sedimentary soils, very akin to like what a Rutherford, wine has in here. There's kind of this not dusty quality per se, but kind of this nice earthy quality to it. Yeah, certainly better after some good swirls. It's still it just coats kind of your whole palate. There's that touch of, that nice kind of bright acidity from that cool vintage gives it that like a little bit of like a sweet tart kind of characteristic, not overly or overtly like candy, but there's this nice little pop back there of kind of red fruit and kind of richness to it. That's just like, it just kind of is like, ooh, that's nice, that's refreshing. It kind of keeps me coming back for more. Man, this was going back and like my memory banks are just spinning thinking about, how nervous I was making this wine, switching vineyard sites, switching appellations, and trying to make sure that it still kind of holds true to what so many of you have come to love about our Merlot, and specifically our Single Barrel Merlot. Super excited for where this has ended up. Very excited that it's officially out and in the world as of the winter of 2026, and something that we can share with everybody. So hope that you have a chance to try it. Thank you so much for tuning in. Be sure to like, subscribe to the channel here. Check out some of our other tasting notes, some of our production videos. Be sure to follow us. You can also follow us a little bit on the Instagram, the Book of Face, and the social network formerly known as Twitter. We try to post on all those as much as possible to kind of keep you engaged in the world of winemaking and what it takes to go from grape to bottle. So be sure to check all those out. And come on back sometime. We'll hope to see you again here for another round of MTGA Tasting Notes. Cheers.